How you doing, folks? My name is Mark Dutram, and thanks for watching another episode of BayView Views. You know, if you turn on the news right now, you might think that the American consumer is really under pressure, especially with the overall inflation rates, rising gas prices, and rising debt, particularly student loan debt. But when you step back, a slightly different picture emerges. Today, I want to walk you through the key numbers behind the financial health of the U.S. household and why the consumer remains in better shape than most people realize. Now, obviously, economists watch this segment very closely because, of course, you and I represent about 70% of GDP. So let's start with their foundation, household balance sheets. Since 2019, U.S. households' net worth have surged, the top 20% gaining roughly $47 trillion, and the bottom 80% gaining a respectable $17 trillion. So the aggregate net worth today of all U.S. households is roughly $180 trillion, which is really an incredible number when you think about it. Although a lot of that is at the top, again, that is broad-based wealth creation. So let's kind of look at debt levels. Household debt service ratios are around 11% today. That is well below the 2007 peak of nearly 16%. And lower than any time going all the way back to 1980. In other words, Americans are spending less of their income servicing debt than before the financial crisis. So quite simply, the assets have grown faster than liabilities, and that's a healthy setup. There are pocketbooks. There are pockets of stress, particularly in student loans, as we talked about. But total student debt stands at about $1.8 trillion, which is a massive number. But again, that's roughly across 45 million borrowers. And serious delinquency rates have risen to about 16% as required payments have now resumed. However, more than 70% of borrowers owe less than $40,000, and the broader household balance sheet remains very strong. So while student debt is a headline risk, it's not systemic to the overall consumer. Spending. We love to look at spending. Spending behavior remains very resilient. We're a nation of great consumers. Retail sales are up about 3.2% year over year, with core retail sales closer to 4 to 5%. So online and, of course, non-store retail sales are up nearly 10.9% over the past year. And, of course, that signals strong discretionary demand. Even after adjusting for inflation, real retail sales are roughly flat, but not declining like some have stated. Consumers are still traveling, they're still dining out, they're still spending online, which reflects resilience rather than contraction at this point. Gas prices, of course, are on the headlines. So they're a major concern today, but their impact on the U.S. consumer is less today than historically. So gasoline costs represent about 2 to 3% of consumer spending, and total energy spending is around 5 to 6% of household budgets. So that's far below than in previous decades. A useful rule of thumb right now is about every 10% increase in gas price reduces consumer spending by roughly 10 to 15 billion annually. So a dollar increase, again, approaches $100 billion in impact. And that sounds like a really big number, and it is meaningful. But again, it's not enough to derail the economy, especially given, again, strong wage growth, elevated net worth, and the solid employment. So let's transition to employment. The labor market remains the strongest support for consumers, obviously. Unemployment rate is around 4.4% and well below the 30-year average of 5.5%. Wage growth is approximately 3.7%, which is really right at that long-term average. Job openings are about 6.9 million, which is about 1 million below the 10-year average. So this means that more people are working, they're earning more, and they're supporting, again, continued economic activity. So when we look at the big picture, when we put it all together, it's mostly positive, right? Net worth is up significantly, debt is rising but manageable, and spending remains steady, and employment, again, is strong. So the consumer, which again drives roughly 68% of GDP, again, this is the resilience that we need in a key pillar in the broader economy. So while there are always risks, the data tells a clear story. The U.S. consumer is resilient and remains in really solid shape. So as always, guys, we thank you for watching another episode of BayView Views. Have an awesome day.